Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. My husband and I met during the final year of college. We knew each other before, but only as acquaintances. Well, we start dating and things become pretty serious pretty soon. My husband expressed to me how he has never introduced any of his girlfriends to his family before, and how I was the first one he wished to introduce to his family. Although 20-year-old me was initially so flattered at this, I soon realized the reason behind it. The reason was Danica, his younger sister and the princess of the house. Danica was only 2 years younger than Arnos, but she was treated like she was a toddler. Spoiled rotten, and the fact that Arnos's family was pretty wealthy to begin with didn't help much. Arnos was brought up in a similar manner, to make sure to pick his sister over anything and anyone, and to treat her like a princess. This was evident to me since the first day I saw her. I still remember kind of cringing at how childish she was acting for an 18-year-old, but, could keep my composure for the sake of meeting her once. Well, needless to say, Arnos and I fell harder for each other and got engaged. I still remember our engagement party, how hard Danica had tried to overshadow me and how miserably she had failed, causing her to go sulking to Arnos for attention, who happily gave it to her. This also when we had our first argument over this situation. I vividly remember telling him how much it had hurt to see him give all his attention to his sister throughout the event, and how, if he did that again, it would be pretty difficult for me to stay with him. This caused him to get angry at me, telling me how it was unfair of me to just expect Danica to not feel special during her brother's engagement. I guess that is when I should have ended our relationship, but of course, I let my rose-tinted glasses show everything looking heart-shaped and just let go of the situation. Well, Danica fell pregnant the very next year, the year of our marriage, and wouldn't you all know, she announced the pregnancy at our marriage itself. Honestly, after the BS she had pulled throughout the events leading up to my wedding, I was over it, and so didn't really react to her, but I guess this was the point that has upset my husband, and so he sat Danica down and told her to tone it down. Of course, she didn't, since her need for attention had now just doubled with her pregnancy. Her tantrums grew, and honestly, at that point, her parents, Arnos and her baby daddy, all had gotten kind of fed up with her. But of course, they too knew that it was too late to fix anything and that her entitlement had become a part of her. So we all started putting up with her. She gave birth to my beautiful niece, Grace. I fell pregnant too at that point, and by the time Grace turned 1, I gave birth to my male twins. A lot of you must have expected Danica's behavior to improve after giving birth, but that was far from the case. At this point, she had gotten unbearably annoying. My in-laws had started admiring my parenting style, all the while Danica's parenting style was just handing everything over to the babysitters because, of course, how will a woman who can barely care for herself care for a baby? Well, her list of horrible behavior goes on and on. It will probably consume this post and multiple other posts to list it all out. But hey, I still haven't gotten the worst out of it yet. Well, as mentioned earlier, my in-laws often appreciated my parenting style. Rich coming from them, I know, but that's a completely different story. Well, this infuriated my sister-in-law, and she would often try to sabotage my plan. This woman started off with trying to ruin my children's first birthday by ruining his cake, and by the time they had turned 6, she had called the CPS on us 2 times already. This trend followed until my children were born around 12, and that was the final time she called the CPS because, of course, by that time, my children were not only able to speak up for themselves, but also I had started to look after Grace. So, of course, if she called the CPS, Not only would she be taken to the cops, but also lose a free babysitter. Well, this doesn't stop her from being a horrible person, though. All throughout Grace's life, she had been negligent and inattentive, thinking that Grace wouldn't notice because, after all, she was a kid, and of course, kids just want money and not their parents' love and support. Her words, and not mine. Around the time Grace had turned 7, she started practically living in our house because my children and her enjoyed their company so much. Neither I nor Arnos had a problem with this and assumed that sister in law and her husband, yes, her baby daddy, ended up marrying her. Yes, it was for the money, lol, had a problem with us keeping her. So obviously, Grace observed and saw how her own mom didn't care about her and found family within us. We accepted her with open arms, and although we never tried to force anything onto her or replace her parents, she just came to us and we accepted her as she was. Unlike her mom, who always tried to turn her into something she wasn't. Well, it is only recently that Danica got to see the real extent of her doings. It was Grace's 18th birthday recently. We all threw her a huge party where, after cutting the cake, she gave a short thank you speech. Well, that is when she thanked her grandparents, cousins, and parents, referring to us. Needless to say, all hell broke loose as Danica immediately ran to the washroom and crocodile tears flowed down her cheeks. It is not only that, Grace has officially announced that she is going to be returning to our house after every semester instead of my sister in law's from now on. Now, I'm all okay with it and honestly had seen it coming, but I guess it's been a shocker to Danica, who is struggling to accept the fact that she is indeed the one who ruined her relationship with her daughter. She has been trying to become sisters with me ever since, hoping to know what I did to make her so close to me, and honestly, every time she does that, I kind of just laugh at her face, which of course enrages her. This is where I may be the a-hole, though. Or that is what Arnos, sister in law, and my in laws tell me I am for not helping her to form a relationship with Grace. But I genuinely do not think I owe her this. So, Reddit, what should I do here? AITA? I sat down with my husband and showed him this post. I guess reading everything that his sister did, along with y'all's comments, kind of helped him come to his senses because he apologized to me. We then decided to talk to Danica, informing her that we would be helping her to build a relationship with Grace, but in the end, it was her who needed to put in the effort. So we called her up and told her that we should sit and have a conversation. She sounded like she had been crying all this time, and she agreed. So that is what we're looking forward to currently. We'll update once we're done meeting. A few of you had guessed that Danica might have had malicious intentions behind her wanting to rekindle a relationship with Grace. And unfortunately, it pains me to say this, but you guys were right. Arnos and I reached over to Danica's place a bit earlier than expected, and just as we were walking to their house, we heard loud noises of arguments. We decided to step back and sort of try to understand what all the commotion was about. And boy, I wish I hadn't heard all of that because what I heard Danica say next shattered my heart into pieces for her. I heard Danica screaming about how she would do anything to repair the relationship with Grace. She just didn't want my brother in law to pull back the money he had been giving her. Danica's voice was followed by her husband's, telling her how much of a disgrace it was for Danica that after all the money he had given her, she couldn't keep Grace's mouth shut for one family event. It immediately clicked to me what they were talking about, and I knew if I waited here for a moment longer, I would probably punch both Danica and her husband for being a horrible excuse for their parents. Arnos was just as shaken up as me, and so we decided to leave. My phone has been blowing up by Danica for being a no-show ever since, and honestly, I don't know what to confront her, or why even. It all sounds so pointless. What should I do here? Is there any way to fix things? This is going to be a short and final update. You've got to keep it sweet and short when things end on a positive note, you know? I helped Grace move her things into my place recently, and we have decided to go no contact with Danica. Whichever relatives tried to argue with us were threatened with no contact as well, and I guess that was enough to shut them up. Danica, ever since then, has tried multiple times to come to our place to see Grace, who has now threatened a restraining order against her. Things have been a huge mess recently for Danica, as after hearing her discussion with her husband, have pretty much given up on her. As for her husband, after finding out that Grace had permanently moved in with us, filed for a divorce from Danica and has moved out of the house as well, living with one of his many affair partners. A lot of you, like me, had been confused as to why her husband had married Danica in the first place, and the reason being that my father-in-law has offered him a great job. He was a college dropout then and married Danica so that he could have a stable income while completing his degree. He earns extremely well now and pays for all of Grace's expenses, which is of course not enough to be labeled a good parent, but at least better than what Danica did for her. Well, her husband then continued his relationship with Danica because he didn't want his name to go down in the industry he worked in, which primarily functioned on reputation. So, there you guys have it. Danica got her karma. It was slow but hard. Just how it should be, I guess. Thank you all for stopping me from second guessing myself here. It truly means a lot. NTA, there is a reason why Grace basically disowned her own parents. If, like you mentioned, there was no force for her to accept you guys as her real family, then you shouldn't take a moment to second guess yourself. NTA, but is it just me that thinks Danica has something more malicious going on than just feeling regretful for not having a relationship with her daughter? Something related to money, maybe? Please be careful. This girl has put a lot of trust in you. Don't break it by sending her back to her parents. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. My older sister, Kate, is who I no longer have anything to do with. 3 years ago, she announced she was dating Jeremy, my ex, who not only cheated on me throughout our 4-year relationship and got another woman pregnant while we were together, but gave me 2 STDs. We had been broken up close to 2 years when Kate made this announcement. I was furious with her. I asked her how the hell she could do that, how she could expect that to be taken as good news. She told me I broke up with him, so it wasn't fair to say I could never date him. I told her it wasn't the point. The point was he had risked my health and my life with all his sleeping around and passing diseases on to me. She told me I would need to get over it because they were serious about each other. I announced that day I would no longer have Kate in my life. My parents and other siblings followed suit, and she has been mostly ignored. I told them they can continue to see Kate, but we are never going to be in the same room again, and we are not family. Everyone, except for extended family, who are placed at a distance now because of this, has been so understanding. But recently my parents made a comment about not being able to wait for the day our family heals. I asked what they meant, and they said surely Kate will see sense one day and maybe we can all get to a better place. I understood where they were coming from and I let it go, but it bothered me that they might be holding on to hope. So I sat down with them another day and explained that even if Kate breaks up with him, which is unlikely because rumors are going around that she's pregnant, I would never forgive her for going there. I told them there was no coming back from her dismissal of what he did to me. I told them our family won't heal the way they want. Both of them said they understood and apologized and told me that they would never bring it up again. My mom kept asking how Kate could do that. How could they have raised her to be so dumb and dismissive? After that conversation, one aunt, who had not been part of the extended family cutoff, asked why my parents seemed to have totally given up on Kate, and I told her that they must have come to terms with it. She said she knew I said something because before, when she would talk, there was hope for potential reconciliation someday. I told her that I made it clear to my parents that it wouldn't happen, and she told me I was cruel for ending that dream, that it wasn't hurting anyone. I said it would hurt them if Kate and Jeremy broke up, and it wasn't enough for me. She told me my parents hardly have any contact with Kate from me, and that the least I could do is let them have false hope. AITA? NTA, I think it's more cruel to let them hang on to false hope. Generally, honesty is the best policy. NTA, seems like there's minimal conflict here about the conflict you're actually asking about. You said your piece, and your parents understood and made their peace. Your aunt may think you're an AH, but what business does she have with your and your parents' relationship? What Katie did to you was unforgivable, and you were right to warn your parents that even if she breaks up with Jeremy, you wouldn't forgive her. With that said, I do find it a bit extreme for your parents to cut contact with Katie. Even if they disagree with her and they're on your side, they don't need to cut contact. That was their own personal choice. So be happy that you have such supportive parents, but don't make your parents choose between their two daughters. I'm 16, female. My uncle is 38, male. He used to be my favorite uncle, so this really pisses me off. He hates the fact that I read young adult books. Like, he makes a huge deal out of it every time he sees me reading. It's always the same. When I was a kid, we didn't have young adult books. We just read adult books. And you should be reading books at a higher level. These books are just brain candy. And all that cringe crap. He makes fun of some of the books when he reads the cover details. I love reading, and I don't know, I like young adult books. I don't get why it bothers him so much that I'd rather read about people my own age and stuff that's relatable to me instead of stuff like Stephen King or those endless fantasies where every woman has to be violently traumatized. Like, sorry that I'm not into trauma porn. Sorry I read enough to know what I like and don't like. Sorry that I actually like diversity in what I'm reading. Every single book he has ever told me to read has a white cis man as the main character. I've told him before that I don't like the books he recommends and asked him to stop. So, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was reading The Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. He came up and asked me about it. He just laughed and shook his head when I told him. So then the next day he comes over and he has a ton of books with him and it's all this Sherlock Holmes stuff. He tells me that I should give it a try. It'll expand my mind and help me. I finally had it and stood up and dumped the books and told him I don't need to read books about some crusty old cokehead to expand my mind, and that I'm happy reading books that I like, and he needs to stop shaming me for it. I said that he never treats my brothers like this. He's happy to just sit there and play video games with them without criticizing everything they're doing, but somehow everything I do is wrong. He told me that I just have a hard time taking any suggestions because I'm stubborn. I pointed out that I watched a really popular old show, Veronica Mars, because my mom said I would like it. He got pissy and was like, "Stop trying to make this into a gender thing. Kids your age are obsessed with gender." And told me I was being a bratty little bitch and to forget him ever giving me anything ever again. My dad heard about it later and said I came across kind of ungrateful for the books and that I could have just taken them and said thanks and let them get dusty. I said I'd rather he have them if they mean that much to him. AITA? NTA. Book snobs drive me nuts. I'm over 50 and I still read YA if my nieces and nephews recommend a particular book. I have found that it helps me connect with them because we always talk about the book afterward. Granted, there was likely a softer way to say no, thank you, but I also understand getting pushed to snapping. So, a hint of ESH for the delivery. Read what you want to read. A book doesn't have to be a classic or non-fiction to have value. He called you a bitch? A bratty little bitch? Oh my God. OP, one thing I've noticed about certain men is that they can be just wonderful until you reach beyond puberty. They just don't know how to relate to you after that. They can't transition you into being your own person. And before someone says that, it can be the same with some women. Of course it can. But for me personally, I've seen it more with men. Men that have poor relations with adult women. Men that are often divorced or single. Take this as a character flaw with your uncle. It's his loss, not being invited to share your life with him. You're not a little girl anymore for him to train to his liking. NTA.